It looks like it might be 3 o'clock, so we'll call the meeting to order. You have agenda before you, so I'll call the meeting to order. Do we have a copy of the meeting minutes from the last meeting in here? Okay. Has everyone had an opportunity to see the minutes from the last meeting? If you have, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Motion approved by Mr. Presley, second by Debbie. We're going to, in view of the fact that we may be naming some more persons to the board later this year, we will move to set the agenda by, as you look under discussion items, we're going to move the budget review to item A, shelter operations to item B, discuss of the nonprofit to item C, and the option to waive fees for foster care under D. If that's okay with everyone, I'll accept a motion to set the agenda. Motion by Jenny, second by Debbie Jenkins. Debbie. All in favor say aye. Motion carried. Under item A, fiscal year 25 budget review, let's see, Ms. Trout met with the budget committee, I guess last week, and then she visited with them again this past week. Are any questions from the committee about the budget as far as where it sits at this point? I know last year, when at the beginning of budget, Ms. Trout and I discussed the fact that what our hope was to move to a not-for-profit 501c3. And at that time, we discussed the fact that what I would like to have done at that point was move to create that 501c3 and the county make an annual contribution to the animal shelter, and for that other amount to be supplemented by the not-for-profit. In looking at the first budget that I received this year, which was in the neighborhood of $115,000, it became obvious that we hadn't moved in that direction. And so the Budget and Finance Committee looked at the budget and did some significant cuts. So that's where we are, and I think the amount was like $67,000. Any comments from anyone at this point? I know it has been discussed, the possibility of maybe looking at one part-time person for a limited number of hours to supplement, especially if we're going to have the shelter open on Saturdays. Any discussion on that, anyone? Yes, ma'am.
I'm in favor of having a part-time person just so we can arrange for sick days or vacation or whatever, and hours to be determined, I guess, by you and department heads as to what's to be needed.
Okay, would you make that recommendation to the Budget and Finance?
To include a part-time person, yes.
Okay. I don't think we need to vote on that, do it? Is everyone in agreement as far as that is concerned? Okay. Any other thing about budget, anyone? Want to speak to budget? If not, yes, sir.
Got a question. So, on the budget in here, we have, $3,000 for dog food. And I've looked at the, bill so far from CAMS, just from this year, and we're already at $3,340. So how are we gonna fund the last half of the year next year? We've already blown it in 6 months, 5 months this year. 6 months, sorry.
Ms. Trout.
Sorry, the microphone wasn't working. So I did get some, these, pallet, estimates, sorry, the word was escaping me, the estimates for the pallet, for, pallet from, different locations. As far as moving on, I think that we have a pretty good stock in our, what we've got currently, to help us. And then hopefully we can ask for some donations to finish out this month and then the next one. And then I've got these recommendations for the estimates for the next year.
Questions, anyone?
Did you bid out the dog food costs and the grade that you're going to be doing? I know we were giving premium dog food and I just wondered if we still are.
Yes, I do have, if you guys want these, if you want to see them. Cliff, you want to pass those? I've got two. Sorry, I wasn't able to get a third one. Here's another one. I wasn't able to get a third one just because the companies like Co-op, they don't do pallets or they don't do, not necessarily the highest, but the very lowest food qualities. So what I have given Cliff was not the same that I gave you. There were two different ones.
Any questions on that? Y'all want a moment to look that over? Please take your time. Ms. Trout, there's still a possibility that you can get that trailer load of free dog food from time to time.
There is a possibility when, I'm not 100% sure where that would be.
I know in a previous meeting, Ms. Trout, that you had mentioned that you had $12,000 in reserve and you were going to use it for some different things. And in the last meeting, you mentioned that you'd rather do a new roof. Is that what your thinking is today?
Yes, that's
Okay,
the only thing that I'm looking at right now. If, you know, there's nothing else able to improve on the building, the roof is the thing that has to be done.
okay. Have you had someone inspect it as far as,
I've had about 4 or 5 people come out and inspect it. I've had a couple of people not show back up and not return calls. I've had one person give me an estimate and then another person not come back. I've got Mike Dyes working on it for me right now. I'm sure everybody knows he's pretty busy. So he has come out, looked at it. He looked at it maybe a week and a half ago was the last time I saw him or someone affiliated with him. And then Cliff came out yesterday and looked at it. So hopefully we'll get something here pretty soon.
okay.
Are you more concerned about the inside roof or the actual top of the roof? What are your concerns? Is it more about the insulation and the internal?
My concerns are the ceiling. The gentleman that was out prior to Mike said that the roof seemed to be about 10 years old. And it needs to be replaced because it is 10, it needs to be replaced. I don't know how old the building is. Someone may know that number. I don't. And then the ceiling itself, we were thinking about putting tin as a better insulator. And then I think Mike explained it to me that he would put a type of insulation between the roof and the ceiling itself to help with the insulation. We get obviously mice and snakes and birds and insects. And you can see the sky from the ceiling, so it needs to be replaced.
Any other, concerns about shelter operations from any of the members at this point?
I have a few concerns about the shelter. We are addressing the dog food. My concern about the dog food on these estimates, you get 28 to a pallet. How far or how quickly will you use those 28 bags?
So we have been looking at, we've trying to keep track of how many bags of food we use in a month. And so far, right now, estimated about 7 bags. Granted, this is the 26 bags, or excuse me, 26 pounds. So that would be 7. With a 33-pound bag, we were using Purina Pro Plan, and that was probably about 5 or 6, depending on the amount of animals and then the size of the animal in the shelter.
And is this food going to go to the foster homes also?
No, the only food that goes to the foster homes is donations. Or excuse me, I'm completely wrong about that. The food that the foster dogs, yes. Because it says in our laws that, or in our policies that we supply food for foster dogs. So yes, the answer to that would be yes.
Is that the county policy or the policy that you brought up?
No, that was the county policy. It was already stated. I had it printed out and it says on there that food would be provided to a foster.
Is that in the form of a resolution as far as you all know, as far as any of you know? Was that part of a resolution at some point in time?
I've never heard.
Okay. It would seem that would be most unusual. But we certainly need to look at that going forward.
Does anybody know when the last policy was approved?
It has been during my administration. Have we looked at the
I think
policy?
it's been probably about before I retired.
2018, I think.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, and I don't remember that being addressed as far as shelter, foster dogs, but
Mhm.
I could be wrong, but just something to review, I guess.
Ms.
Do we,
Travis, go ahead.
I'm sorry,
Sorry.
do we supply medical services for the foster dogs also?
I was looking for that in the policy. These foster animals are in the care of the shelter, so the answer to that would be yes.
And there are 33 of those. Last count, I think that's the last number we used. The last number I understood was there were 41 dogs in our care and 33 of them were foster dogs.
I'm trying to think of the number. Currently, I believe that has gone down.
Okay.
A couple of those have been adopted.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee on shelter operations?
Where do we stand on the dog food situation?
What kind of dog food is it from Tractor Supply?
The brand that I have on here is Health. 4Health, that's the brand where it says 45-pound bags of 4Health salmon and potato.
So looking at this Tractor Supply dog food that we're talking about come 28 to a pallet, and you're saying that you're using about 7 bags per month, so that would that, do you think it would last you 4 months to get that? 7 times 4 being 28?
Correct.
And it's what, $500 a pallet cheaper than the next lowest price that you got? Is that correct?
Correct.
Did you call the dog food plant in Lebanon to get any kind of quotes?
I did look into that, and that program stopped 5 years ago. They don't do anything where they help community shelters and things.
Will they sell directly to you was the question.
The food that they have is much more expensive. I think it's about $68 a bag.
Ms. Trout, one of my concerns as mayor is the fact that over the last few days, and I know this has been a stressful time for you because budget cuts are never easy. And it means that you have to do, make a lot of adjustments, but, to use the county's website to voice your displeasure as to how things are going is probably, if nothing less than inappropriate. If you certainly have a right to free speech, and if you want to voice your concerns on a personal website, that's perfectly your right. But to use the county's website to express your opinions and displeasures as to how you feel like you're being treated is I don't even know if it's illegal or not, but it's certainly inappropriate. I would also note that in some of your posts, you've named a number of changes that have been made or going to be made because of budget cuts. And at the very least, I think that should have been discussed with this committee before you make those kind of decisions as far as cutting hours and intakes and closing pantries and normal response. That's very alarming to me at this point to see that. Yes, sir.
And I'd like to add that this has only been before Budget and Finance. It's not been put before the court, so we have no idea whether they will approve this budget. They could kick it back with recommendations for positive. You know, it's just been through Budget and Finance. The County Commission hadn't voted on anything.
Also, I noticed that you started a GoFundMe account in your name. That probably should have been approved by the county commission for you to create an entity where money could be raised for the county. Because I think if you'd like to address it, that's fine.
Well, going back to the website, it's on the social media, and the intent to that was to get the community involved in supporting the shelter, not to show shame or any ill will towards the commission or the county. And then as far as the GoFundMe, it was created in the nonprofit name. It just has my name on it because it not necessarily going to a third-party person. I didn't create it. It was, my name was put on it because it was associated with my nonprofit that was created.
But do you have a nonprofit to put that money in at this
Yes.
point? Which would be what?
The nonprofit that we created to support the shelter. It's called Helping Animals Rescue Team.
501c3?
I mean, it is in the direction to be that. That's the whole purpose of that. No,
So then that money has no place to land at this point, as I understand it.
the whole purpose of that would be to put it in to the shelter.
So where was that money deposited at this point?
in the account that's for the nonprofit.
But I think you just said the nonprofit had not been created yet.
The whole process of this is still going.
How are you going to be accountable for the money to whomever is governing this? I mean, does it even have a governing board?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so you had, in this nonprofit, you have like your budget and you have your 501c3 applied for but not received, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
I have a question.
Yes,
Ms. Trout is a county employee working at a county facility and raising money in the assumption for the county facility. But it's not going to that, it's going to the future of the 501c3. If she is employed with the county and is fundraising on county time under a county name, that money needs to be deposited within the county because she is employed with the county. Am I correct or not?
I think you are correct. I was given to understand, Ms. Trout, in the meeting this week, when you were before the Budget Committee, that you had decided that the 501c3 was not the route to take.
The point to that statement was to not take that route, but to pause that and get back to it when it was finished.
Okay,
Because I think a lot of the commissioners were putting a little bit more real estate in that instead of continuing to fund the shelter.
any other comments from the committee on operation of the shelter?
I just want to say, Ms. Trout, that you are a county employee, as along with Cliff and I. Debbie used to be, of course, the mayor and Amy. And we strive to do the best that we can for our departments. I feel that some of the things that you have said on social media has caused a turmoil within our county. Our last meeting, I told you why I was on this board. I told you I love animals and I love this county. And I think that the wording that you use on your social media is not telling full truth of what is happening with your budgets and your department. And I feel that you shouldn't be on a county page saying this, and I feel that everything should be on board. I noticed the other night you did say that you were wrong with the budget cut of $3,000 in the food, but you had been on social media before that saying how they cut the food. Everybody was appalled that our county wasn't going to feed the animals. But you didn't get on social media and say you were wrong and say that you misunderstood the budget. And if you don't know the budget 100% or what was cut and what was not, then you should not be putting it out there on social media and causing an uproar within our county. I think everybody on this board is here because we love animals. And I think the county commissioners probably all feel for the animals, but they're doing the best that they can for the county and for every department. And we need to support our county, especially on county social media pages.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to make a request, and, you know, I really wish this had not gone out on social media before you brought it back to your animal control board. I mean, we've already talked today and, you know, we made a motion in a second to put a part-time person back in there. And none of this has gone before the full commission for a vote. So this is still in making. And am I correct? It's only been before finance committee. Is that correct?
Correct.
So there's still options. You could come back to the board and say, okay, this is what they're wanting to do. And we need to work on this and see if we can meet a compromise or whatever, because I don't think any of us on this board want to see the quality of care reduced for the animals, but we do want to provide quality care at an affordable price. And I would just request that, you know, it come back to the board and give us a chance to work with the finance committee and the commission, and, you know, I think it could be worked out.
I think, well, I know that originally with former Mayor Chambers, that the intent was at a point in the future to transfer the actual ownership of the animal shelter to a 501c3. And he was correct in his approach that there are more grants available, there's more funding available, there's more flexibility in operating an animal shelter under a nonprofit 501c3 than under county government. That was 4 years ago. And I really wasn't aware that that's what he had in mind a year ago when I mentioned to Ms. Trout and a number of the commissioners that I saw a transition. At no time has it been the purpose or the thought of this mayor's office or this commission to do away with the animal shelter. That's never been our intent. That's never been discussed. It was to make a proper transition from a county-owned facility to a not-for-profit, to open up opportunities to get more money, which I think the long-term opportunity lies there, and that was our purpose. Whether or not we made a fast transition, which would have been great, whether or not we did a gradual transition, but I saw that as being the route to take. Any other comment on shelter operations before we allow Ms. Johnson to discuss the status of our 501c3?
That's what I'd like to know, because in the budget meeting the other night, what I heard was that it was off the table. We were no longer going that route, so I'd like to know exactly where we are with that when we stopped and said we can't do it.
It wasn't my intention to make it seem as if it was not. It was to say that it was coming back to it once it was finished, once it was finalized.
I understand that may have not been your intention, but that's what you said. You said it is no longer, and I'm going to paraphrase, but that is no longer an option. We're not going to go in that direction. Now, that may have not been your intention, but that's what was said. Ms. Johnson, would you like to come forward and can you tell her which mic? Can we, right here would be fine. We appreciate very much your taking your time to come today, and what we'd like for you to do is to kind of bring the committee up to speed on the process that you've gone through and where we are with the nonprofit 501c3.
Okay, do you want me to start at the very beginning or just, well, it actually all started summer of 2022 when Rebecca and I first started talking, when she said that they needed a nonprofit to come alongside the shelter to be able to support it and raise the funds. And that's what I do. I'm an accountant that specializes in nonprofits, and I set them up and have set up hundreds of animal rescues across the country. But anyway, so that's kind of where we started in the process. But along that same time, the year before, if you remember Miss Donna McGregor with Dreamland, she had passed away with COVID. And Dreamland was just kind of sitting there because nobody could take care of the puppies, and there was money involved, and the remaining board members didn't want to do anything with that. So in the midst of all that, Dreamland changed hands, board members, and what Dreamland now does is helps people that can't afford the vet bills and does some of that kind of stuff. So originally, when we talked, we were going to see if we could make that work where Dreamland could come alongside the shelter and help. But it didn't take too long before we realized that that just wasn't working well. So then we decided that it would be a better plan for an independent 501c3 that they started. So this is actually the Articles of Incorporation. So it was February 3rd of last year that the nonprofit Helping Animals Rescue Team was incorporated with the state. So that made it a legitimate nonprofit in the state of Tennessee, but not a 501c3 yet. So while she can do limited fundraising under that, she can't claim 501c3 status yet until we finalize it. And it's, when it first started, we've had a lot of meetings. And so when the first started, it was, looked like it was going to be much bigger. The budget was bigger. There's 2 levels of filing for the 501c3. The bigger level says that your budget's going to be greater than 50,000 a year, and the lesser, of course, is below. So originally we were starting out with it going to be the larger one, which requires a lot more detail. You've got to be able to have the detailed plans, programs for the next 3 years and the budget that matches it.
Let me interrupt for 1 second.
Sure.
So what was that date? February?
February the 3rd of 2003.
Okay, so at that point, the nonprofit was set up
Yes, it
And-
became official.
and money could have been deposited in that
Yes,
corporation.
yes.
Okay, go
I'm
ahead,
sorry, can
please.
I ask a question?
Mhm.
Are you saying February 3rd, 2003 or 2023?
2023, did I say 3? Yeah.
Yeah.
2023.
February
sorry.
2023. Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Went off again. So we had a lot of back and forth time of, I need this information to be able to prepare and this and that, but budget wise, we never landed on the budget to do the big one. And so, just a few months ago, the conversation was, well, it's just I think it's just going to be the smaller budget. And so just a few weeks ago, I think was when we met the last time. And, you know, she said that it was possible that she was getting funding from here that might be more than that 50,000, but that maybe we should go ahead and go with the smaller one so that we could go ahead and get it filed and move on because it had been dragging on so long. I've got it, the small one, I've got it prepared, I've got it ready. All it's got to be done is pay the filing fee and send it on, and it'll go to the IRS, and the little ones usually come back in 30 to 60 days.
Okay.
So if you want to file that, but now if you want to file with a bigger budget, we've got more work to do.
Okay, so, as I understand, the smaller one is 50,000, is a max of 50,000.
50,000 or less total revenue. And now that includes not just cash contributions, but that includes if you get contributions of dog food or, you know, cages or anything else.
So for the for the corporation to grow, you really need to go to the larger one over time.
Yes, it really what the IRS looks at, because you have to file the 990 tax return every year. So, the IRS wants to see the first 3 years. If you do the larger one, they're wanting to see how you lay out your plans of, you know, this is what we're gonna do, this is how we're gonna do it, this is who we're helping, this is how we're raising our money, that sort of thing. And then your budget has to match what you're saying you're gonna do, and they want to see that 3-year plan to be able to approve it. If you go with the lesser one, you don't have to show the budget. You just say, we're an animal rescue. We don't ever expect to get bigger than this, and go that way.
Okay, let me ask another question. On the filing. I'm thinking about this for just a second. On the 501c3. Let's go to another, I've lost that thought. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I know how that goes. My brain goes
Along
that
the
too.
way, have you been paid for your services for what you've done so far?
The Dreamland
Mhm.
paid me for the initial startup phase of it, that $250. So that's all I've been paid so far.
Okay, did the my thought came back to me, the corporation that you set up, did it require a board of directors and
Yes, it
quarterly
requires
re-
a board of directors, and according to what I have, let me see, I should actually have that in here. When I prepare the original, what I call startup package for any
Okay.
organization like that, it includes your articles of incorporation that have the 501c3 language in it, the bylaws that you have to go by, as well as getting the EIN number, but I also include a minutes template for the original Board of Directors meeting that you have to have, and an agenda for that meeting, and a banking resolution to help everybody know what you're supposed to be doing and get started. And, so that's kind of where we start on that. So I'm showing, now this is the actual application to the IRS that I have ready. I'm showing Rebecca as the president. I'm showing Michelle Dahlman as secretary treasurer, and Brian King as the vice president. I don't know if that's still the board, but that's who I have.
But that could be changed
That can
easily.
be changed, yes, we can
It
change
does,
it.
does the same board that would govern the not-for-profit govern the 501c3, or is that two separate?
No, it's the same thing.
Okay, so it'd be the same board.
It'd be the
that
same,
you have.
same board. And your only restrictions with the 501c3 are you have to have a minimum of 3 board members who are not related by blood, marriage, or business.
Okay,
And the president and the secretary have to be 2 separate individuals, but other offices can, be like secretary, treasurer, that
so,
sort of.
so the one that's greater than 50,000, is it more complicated as far as meetings and notes and bylaws?
Well, it requires more accountability. If you stay under the 50,000, then you only have to file the 990N every year that
Okay.
says, hey, we're still under 50,000 and we're still doing whatever. Once you go above that mark, then the next level up is the 990EZ tax filing. And of course, you're reporting your board members and your income and expenses and that sort of thing. And then the next level up is the full 990, which is the whole lot more accounting
Okay.
for that. So it is more accountability for the larger ones. A lot of people try and do the smaller ones just so they don't have to do
So-
as much.
So how much more complicated will it be for you to go to the larger than 50,000 and get it turned into the Internal Revenue Service?
Well, we've got to be able to lay down the budget is the biggest thing. And I mean, it doesn't, because for that one, like I charge 400 for the small one, I charge 950 for the big one, because that includes the consultation and the IRS representation and working with the programs. What I typically do is sit and say, okay, what are you gonna do? And I make my little notes and I write out this beautiful narrative to make the IRS think it's grand. And then I'm like, okay, so now let's look at the budget that goes along with this. And I ask my clients to give me their first draft of the budget based on what, they're thinking, because obviously I'm not in their mind. And then I say, okay, well, you said this, what about that? I don't see it in the budget. Or if you're going to have paid employees, we have to also say, what average hours are, what their qualifications may be. We have to say something about some of that sort of stuff. We also have to, in the larger one, we have to tell more detail about the board of directors, who they are and that sort of thing.
So on your first budget, is it somewhat hypothetical?
It is, they don't hold your feet to the fire with it. That's right. It is, this is what so since it incorporated in 2003, we would have to show anything that actually happened in 2003. So that would be simple. I'm guessing there hadn't been a whole lot there. So that would be year 1. And then we would have to do, I keep saying 03, don't I? 2023 and 2024 and 2025. And since we've not really done anything yet, you would want to go ahead and put 2026 on there, because they want to see 2 full years at least of projected if you don't have history.
So we need to pay you $400 for your work so far. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And if we want to move on to the other, pay another 450, or whatever we need to do.
Yes, sir. Just depends on which one you want. Now, the IRS filing fee for this little one is the $275,
Okay.
and the IRS filing fee for the big one is $600. And I pay, because I have to do it on my computer online, I pay it with my credit card, and that's a reimbursable fee typically, unless, sometimes some people will give me their card, but
So you can bill us and we can get you paid. Is that
yes,
correct?
yes.
I'm sorry I've asked so many questions, but
Oh, no,
you're a marvelous educator. Okay. So thank you for that.
well, thank you.
I
I
have
was
a
just
question.
hoping to be able to shed light on some of this for everybody so that, because I think sometimes I've had miscommunication I don't always, if you ask my husband, I don't always make things clear enough to, I think I've said something and I start mid-sentence, so, I think Rebecca may have thought that this was already filed, but that it wasn't based on our latest
Any questions
conversation.
from the committee?
I
I know
have
I've
just
kind of
a
dominated.
Couple
Go.
things because I have to go, but, I have a question that how can Ms. Trout want and go to her and say, let's do the lower one when she's fighting so hard to get more money in her budget? And it's even over it now. Her budget's at $68,000, but she's willing to start with a 50,000 or less budget. So if in her mind, in her nonprofit, she can run with that, why are we having all of these problems with budgets? That's one of my questions. And then I just want to know if this needs to be an emotion or not before I leave, because it's been on my mind. If we need to make a motion to go before the Budget and Finance to, ask for a 15 or 20 hour a week person. And also in a different motion, or the same one, to discuss her hours of maybe closing on Wednesday, like we said, so she can work on Saturdays. So those are some things that I think need to be cleared up. And thank you for all that clarification. But I am concerned that Ms. Trout can run on 50,000 or less in a nonprofit, but she can't under the county. So that was my big concern.
I think if we're going to think optimistically, we need to be thinking in terms of more than 50,000, because the purpose of this is to allow this thing to grow. And, I don't have a problem foreseeing a $100,000 budget or a $250,000 budget at some point in time, once we get our machinery in line and take advantage of all the resources that are out there to fund animal shelters. I mean, the money's out there. It's just a matter of being focused and getting your machinery in gear. Questions? Do we need to, at this point, in view of, you haven't made the motion yet, but we'll get to that, but do we need to make a motion that we give her permission to go ahead to pursue the higher 501c3, you think? Okay. So I would entertain your motion that we make a recommendation for a part-time person. Or you can restate that. I'm sorry. That's already done. Yeah, we did.
Did we make a motion on?
Yeah, I think a motion before the full committee needs to be made, so I'll take that as a motion and second. Okay, second from Debbie. Any further discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Now I'll entertain a motion to grant you permission to pursue the larger 501c3 status. Motion by Jenny, second by Mark Presley. Any discussion on that? I do think this opens up the opportunity for us to accomplish what we'd like to accomplish. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carried. Thank you so very much. I feel like we're much better informed on and know where we are. So actually, under the nonprofit corporation, we could be raising money now, but it wouldn't be under a tax-free status at this point, but money could be raised.
The rules are, once you've incorporated, you can do low-key fundraising, but you can't do giant public fundraisers, because one of the things, once we get the 501c3, one of the next things we have to do is get the sales tax exemption with the state and register with the charitable solicitation department that allows you to do the big fundraising.
Okay.
So they want that C3 first. So that's why you have to, you can ask local people, you can do stuff, but you can't do the big fundraisers under the nonprofit until you have the C3.
Okay. Any questions?
Where are we gonna land with this, GoFundMe account once it's, expires or the funds have reached $5,000 is what's on there? How do we have to pay tax on that or anything?
The 501c3 is retroactive to the incorporation date. As long as you file it within the 24 months that you started, you can go back. So it'll be, let's say that we get it filed next month and it gets approved. It takes a little longer for the bigger ones to get approved because they land on somebody's desk and depending on if they're on vacation or if they've got a pile this big. So it can take up to 4 or 5 months for the bigger ones. But once they approve it, it goes back to that February last year date. So anything you've done from that date forward counts.
So are we, I'm not asking for a legal opinion here, but if she's created a GoFundMe account and money is going in there, okay. I am asking for a legal opinion. Where are we legally on that? Can that be done?
As long as that is, the way that it sounds like you've got it set up, it's set up for the nonprofit and not for the county, right? And it's not going to anybody personally, and everybody knows that they're just donating to the shelter. GoFundMe is, and I have to disclose, I'm an accountant, not a lawyer, so I'm not speaking legally. But GoFundMe is a little more loosey-goosey with things like that as far as when people are receiving donations, most everybody that gives through that are not holding you to the higher standard of, I want to make sure you have that 501c3 before I give to you.
Okay,
So-
where should that money be parked?
And you have a bank account for the nonprofit, yes,
Okay, under the name of the nonprofit that you've created for us.
yes, right, yes.
They would not allow me to create an account without that information that we've already started. So it
Okay.
is legally for the nonprofit.
Yeah.
Okay. Question from the committee?
How much does GoFundMe keep from, I know they get something out of this deal. What do they get?
I would have to do some research on that. I'm not 100% sure.
Any other questions from the committee? Any comments, Ms. Trout? Do you have any comments? Anything to say? Anyone at all?
I don't recognize any of the nonprofit board members. Are they from here? Are they local?
You know, Brian King, and then Michelle, she's local. She's new to the area. And for some reason, the third person is escaping my mind. I thought there was an additional person, but then me.
I know that Brian has resigned from a number of boards and probably the 3 minimum, I understand, but we probably need more representation on that.
I've had more people, but they either moved away or weren't able to continue to be part of the board.
Okay. That, I would say at our next board committee meeting, we need to address that issue before you, or those can be changed, I'm assuming.
They can be changed right now, as long as you have at least 3 people,
You can go ahead and.
we
file it.
we can file. Our biggest thing is gonna be, because I know a lot, I've got pages of notes of what she wants to do and how some of the programs that she wants to do. Our biggest thing is nailing down what we think the budget's going to be.
Okay. And I think this committee can be very helpful on that, don't you? Yes, sir.
The GoFundMe is 2.9%. That's what they take. Just looked it up.
Okay.
I've got another, well,
Anything else, y'all? Okay.
the microchip program in the park, how did that go? Did it go good?
Yes, we sold all of the microchips.
How many is all of them? How many did you sell?
We had 26.
26. It was cash only. Did people get receipts? Were there receipts written for this program?
No, since it was for the nonprofit, I didn't have any receipts given.
Okay, thank you.
I think under the rules of a nonprofit, though, there should be a paper trail on all funds, should there be, or is there a minimum?
Well, if you're receiving something in exchange for something, so they're getting a good in exchange for what they're doing, those types of fundraisers, you don't necessarily get a receipt, you have what you have, because it's not a donation.
Okay,
But if you give an excess, let's say you're charging $10 for the gadget that you're selling as your fundraiser, and somebody gives you 20, then they need a receipt that says, thank you for your $20, $10 went to this, the other 10 is a donation that you can use for your tax deductible purposes.
okay, so Ms. Trout, when you sell 25 of those and you got $250, do you deposit that in your what account?
In that nonprofit account.
That nonprofit account, which you have a bank account set up, so you're keeping a paper trail on it, okay? Yeah. Who bought the chips? Yeah, are the chips donated or do you purchase the chips from?
The nonprofit purchased the chips.
Okay.
And we didn't get charged for any taxes or any shipping.
Okay. So is that in your budget to purchase those chips?
It is in the budget to do different types of events like that, yes.
I think as a board, and since this is, even if we do go the 501c3 altogether, as a board, I think it would be very helpful to us to know what is coming out of county coffers and what is coming out of the nonprofit that she has, because it's kind of getting commingled in my mind, and I don't know what we're paying for. And sitting on the board, I'd like to be able to have an answer to a question, you know? If you could do that, you know, by our next board meeting, just give us an idea of, you know, what you have available and what you're doing there. And we can kind of work that together with the budget that we have.
Ms. Johnson, let me ask you another question. During the time of making the transition from a county-owned facility to the not-for-profit, do we need to have some kind of audit along the way to see that we're following the proper procedures to make that transition?
The transition, you're speaking of transitioning the animal shelter from the county to the nonprofit.
Mhm.
Yes, there needs to be a paper trail. The nonprofit has to account for, like I was saying, everything that comes in. That's that 990 tax return and the charitable solicitation that we have to file with the state. So, we would show, I mean, like if you're renting the facility, you know, the county owns the facility, if you're renting it to them for $1 a year or whatever, that has to be shown on the budget as the, some in-kind, you know, that sort of stuff so that you can see. But there has to be an accounting for it, you know, we purchased these things for the fundraiser. This is the income for the fundraiser. And then this is the donation to the animal shelter if they're buying something for the shelter. Then when it starts transitioning the other way around, the county's going to have to start showing what it does to the transition from the county to there. So if it's monetary, it's a, you know, donation from the county to there, but any of the assets that currently sit, cages, desks, whatever has been purchased with county funding, if you're transitioning that all to the nonprofit, then that would be a donation, an in-kind donation to the nonprofit. So that would come off of your books as a gift, and then it would be received into the nonprofit as a donation.
So that's really simpler than it sounds.
It is simpler than it sounds. Yeah,
Okay.
I do it all the time.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just one last question. Since she's fundraising under her nonprofit and she's depositing it and she's getting GoFundMe and she's doing the microchips, is she, Ms. Trout, this is to you, are you able to put money into your budget for the animal shelter? Is all that, I mean, isn't that what we're really wanting, is her to be able to, with these funds that she's collecting, can she not help the shelter through her nonprofit during this transition? Because, I mean, people are confused in the public that, you know, she's got these funds, but they're not using it for the animal shelter, and then the county is not helping the animal shelter, but there is funds out there that people are giving for the animal shelter. Can that money be in the budget to help her budget?
I think what you're saying is this, if the GoFundMe account begins to grow, okay, within the nonprofit, that at some point in time, when she needs some funds, rather than going to a budget amendment, she just draw on that account going forward. Does that make sense?
Well, let me, throw something in there to just totally wreck all of that. A nonprofit has to be, you know, each of the board members have the fiduciary responsibility, as I'm sure you're aware, of how to spend those funds.
Okay.
So it couldn't be where, because right now, she kind of has a conflict of interest if she says, well, our budget at the animal shelter, because let's say the animal shelter budget can't pay her assistant or can't pay her or something, and she says, oh, well, there's money over here, we could take that and do this. She can't just arbitrarily do that. The board has to, you know, the shelter has to present to the nonprofit board the request for funding for X, you know, we need dog food. So then they can say to the nonprofit, we need $500 for dog food, and then the nonprofit then would say, yes, we'll do that, and give them so it has to have that paper trail as well as the accountability.
There are certain hoops you have to
Yeah.
jump through to make that happen. Okay, gotcha. That makes perfect sense. Anything else? Yes.
I'm looking at these dog food prices, and I've been staring at this list since we started. They seem very expensive brands of dog food. And I admit I buy this dog food for my dogs, but it being taxpayer dollars, can we not use a cheaper brand of dog food?
Do you have a brand in mind that I can look into?
I'm not saying Old Roy, but there are some dog foods that are in the middle there that are a lot cheaper than this. Purina is cheaper. I don't have any problems with that type of dog food. I just wonder why why we're at the top of the line dog food here for strays and shelter dogs. You know, you take a starving dog, it'll eat anything. And I'm not saying feed it anything, but there is quality dog food for a reasonable price, in my opinion.
I'm sure we can look at that going forward. Go ahead.
At our last meeting, we talked about possibly even being able to buy this from the state off state bid. Did we ever pursue that?
I was unable to get that information.
Anything else on this? We're going to item D to discuss waiving adoption fee on foster families.
May I say something real quick?
Sure.
Cliff, I just wanted to follow up with your comment about Purina. I have looked into these companies that I've shown you, plus Co-op in Travis County and in Macon County, and then also the feed store in Lebanon. 2 out of the 3 did not, or were not able to carry that, or weren't able to give me Purina Pro Plan. But then the Lebanon feed store, it was $87 a bag.
Discussion on waiving the adoption fee for foster dogs. What are y'all thinking? Ms. Trout, you may want to address that.
I would like to say something about that. I have been talking to my employee and then some other people in other places that they were doing things, and foster dogs, I was thinking about providing, so they have other rules in other rescues and things, have other rules that they go by and with their fosters. One of them being that that foster family provides the food, that foster family provides the medical care. And that's all in the contract that we have that person sign. Maybe if we don't want to do food for that foster dog, then maybe we provide a small bag of food of the brand that we use, and then they provide food afterwards. So I don't necessarily know if I would want to cut the fee out altogether, but maybe come up with a more reasonable approach to these foster dogs, because I utilize fosters. I try to utilize them more than in the shelter because it's more appropriate.
Comments from the committee?
There's an email in here from a guy that has one of our dogs now that is, came to the shelter, and, I was told that we were aware that it had a biting problem. It was adopted out to a family with children and has bit multiple children. This guy would like to take the dog, but is not willing to pay the adoption fee. The adoption fee's already been paid by family number one. Are we gonna charge double, or if he comes back triple, or can we waive this? I make a motion, we waive this fee for at least this dog.
In this
Second that.
particular case,
Sir.
in this particular case, or that we, okay,
Second.
okay, I have a motion and a second to waive the fee in this particular case. Any
And
discussion?
in my opinion, that'll save the dog's life in discussion. That will save the dog's life, and if need be, I'll pay it. But, we need to make sure this dog's in good hands.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Motion carried.
I got one more thing. I know I'm running late, but, Sam's has, Purina dog chow for $27.98 for 48 pounds, so we have a Sam's account. I'm willing to go down there and pick it up in my pickup if necessary. I just think there's better prices out here than what we're paying. It's gonna be a big hit on the budget to spend, that kind of money, that we're looking at for dog food. I'd rather see it spent somewhere else, either in, quality care, otherwise vet bills, a part-time assistant to help take care of them in the therapy or the daily handling that you say they need. And I agree, they do need that, but I just think we could save money on this dog food. We're paying way too much for dog food. I'm quitting. That's all I have to say. Thank y'all.
Any other comments? Thank y'all for your time. Thank you especially for taking time, and be sure to send us an invoice, okay? Any public comment? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. This motion is not debatable. All in favor, say aye. Thank you.